Today on Newsgirls, all the ways Trump's breaking the law and any mass forcible displacement violates the Geneva Conventions.
Next on the list is all the fallout from Trump's 90-day freeze on foreign assistance.
Are lab-grown diamonds a fad? And depending on the size and cut of the stone, lab-grown diamonds are 70% to even 90% cheaper.
But it's interesting how the emergence of the lab-grown diamond market has created some new trends in the engagement ring market.
And animals are gay. No, really.
This is a Valentine's Day episode. Do you find anything particularly romantic about animals?
Most lion prides are actually dominated by coalitions of males that have sex with each other.
Our president recently signed an order declaring officially that there are only two genders. What does nature tell us?
Welcome to Newsgirls' Valentine's Day episode.
I'm Wren.
And I'm Mabel.
Before we get into the romance, let's catch up on politics. According to experts, a constitutional crisis is unfolding as a result of President Trump's onslaught of executive actions, cutting funding, freezing aid, and ending protections.
The term constitutional crisis brings back the thought of these dark moments in American history, like Watergate or the Civil War. As of now, more than 40 lawsuits have been filed recently by state attorneys, unions, and nonprofits, hoping to block what they call Trump's illegal orders.
So we decided to look into the power of the executive branch to determine if Trump's orders are legal or if he's overstepped.
And whether we can expect Congress or the courts to intervene and enact the checks and balances that define our government.
Kicking off the Is This Legal docket, Trump signed an executive order to cancel the student visas and deport all foreign students who participate in pro-Palestinian protests.
The White House released a fact sheet calling the protesters Hamas sympathizers, saying to all the resident aliens who joined in the pro-jihadist protests, we put you on notice. Come 2025, we will find you and we will deport you. And of course, everyone has their own opinions on these university protests, and we're not even going to get into that, but the right to protest is protected under the First Amendment, so this threat of deportation is alarming.
Yeah, civil rights advocates warn that this unfairly paints largely peaceful student protesters as terrorist sympathizers. The Knight First Amendment Institute said the First Amendment protects everyone in the United States, so deporting non-citizens on the basis of their political speech would be unconstitutional.
And this order is intended to fight anti-Semitism in the U.S., but it's important to note that there was a rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobic threats and violence in the U.S. after Hamas attacked Israel in 2023.
Well, people are pointing out that this order closely mirrors the Heritage Foundation's Project Esther, which is a right-wing blueprint to target the pro-Palestinian movement under what they call a national strategy to combat anti-Semitism. Remember, the Heritage Foundation also released Project 2025, and its author was just sworn in as director of the Office of Management and Budget.
Pro-Palestinian advocates are also bracing themselves for legislation that would give the Treasury the power to strip nonprofits of their tax-exempt status if it's believed to support terrorism. And this is without the Treasury needing any proof or evidence at all. And so critics think that this is a chilling indicator for the future of advocacy groups in this country.
No matter what you think of the Palestinian cause, the First Amendment violation clearly makes this illegal.
This administration is riding further down this slippery slope because last week, of course, Trump announced that he wants to seize, occupy, and rebuild Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing. And I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
And Trump has had his eye on Gaza for a while. He's talked about the beautiful weather and the sea and wanting to build glass towers over there. Actually, in 2020, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, even proposed remodeling Gaza for tourism. But Trump only now recently announced his desire to take over after his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, described the horrific conditions over there that he observed from high up in his plane.
And everyone was shocked when Trump made this announcement. Even Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who was sitting next to him, looked shocked. Apparently, even Trump's own senior White House officials had no idea this was coming because they haven't had any meetings or budget or anything to prepare for it.
And nations around the Arab world like Egypt and Jordan, even US ally Saudi Arabia, are extremely opposed to this idea. And countries around the world are saying that it would be a serious violation of international law because, obviously, if Trump wants to rebuild there, the 2 million Palestinians that currently live there would have to be forcibly moved somewhere else.
Right, and any mass forcible displacement violates the Geneva Conventions, so it would be an international crime. And experts have warned this process would also mean ethnic cleansing, so the UN called the whole idea unlawful, immoral, and completely irresponsible.
And in the days following this announcement, Trump has made a lot of confusing statements. Like he mentioned last Friday that Gaza would be given to the US by Israel at the conclusion of fighting, but the UN's top court has ruled that Israel is actually an illegal occupier of Palestinian territory, so they don't really have the authority to hand over Gaza to some random foreign country.
And people were questioning this use of taxpayer funds since the UN estimates it will cost $80 billion to rebuild Gaza. But Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that no U.S. tax dollars will be used. So who would pay for this?
And then, of course, there's so much damage to Gaza already. It's been this war-torn area for over a year. Apparently, 69% of structures there have been damaged. There's 50 million tons of rubble, which is 12 times the size of the Great Pyramids. And everyone assumed that the US military would carry out this operation, but Trump said that no soldiers would be needed. So who? It's just like invisible people with invisible money.
Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and most people seem to think this plan won't even come to fruition.
And so even if it doesn't happen and it was just this like idea that was carelessly thrown around, it did do a lot of damage. I mean, at the bare minimum, it disrupted decades of foreign policy work in the Middle East.
Well, let's hope for Trump's sake he was just thinking out loud, because this one seems cut and dry illegal.
Next up, I'm sure we've all heard how Elon Musk's team Doge accessed the U.S. Treasury's central payment system, which handles tax refunds, social security benefits, veteran benefits, and more.
And this is problematic because Elon Musk is considered a special government employee, meaning he didn't go through Senate confirmation. So giving him access to millions of Americans' social security and bank account numbers is a big risk, according to data safety experts.
Attorneys say that with this information, Doge could illegally freeze federal funds, blocking payments to Americans for healthcare, childcare, and other essential programs. And this sounds like a crazy hypothetical, like why would Doge freeze all of these programs? Well, Elon has made his thoughts very clear on what he thinks of excessive government spending.
So obviously 19 Democratic attorneys general from around the country sued Doge in federal court. The New York Attorney General said this unelected group led by the world's richest man is not authorized to have this information. And the Connecticut Attorney General said this is the largest data breach in American history.
And the central argument against this is that it would violate the Privacy Act of 1974, the Federal Information Security Modernization Act, and the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, as well as taxpayer privacy under the Internal Revenue Code.
Oh, just those 4 laws. Even the president doesn't have the ability to authorize access to tax return information since it's among the most protected federal data. And these strict restrictions were added after the Nixon administration was caught using tax records to target political opponents.
Critics are also worried about giving a billionaire whose companies like Tesla and SpaceX have these huge government contracts access to such sensitive information. But on the other side, proponents of this argue that Elon's team actually needs this data to root out inefficiencies and reduce government spending, since that is the entire job.
Well, a federal judge last week blocked Elon's team from accessing the sensitive information. It's just a preliminary injunction, so we'll have to watch and see how it plays out.
Safe to say that the verdict for this one is illegal. Next on the list is all the fallout from Trump's 90-day freeze on foreign assistance. And you've all definitely heard like bits and pieces, but we're going to iron it all out for you here.
So on Trump's first day in office, he ordered a 90-day freeze on all $70 billion going to U.S. foreign assistance programs to assess their efficiency and alignment with U.S. foreign policy.
Critics say that this executive order will cause a humanitarian catastrophe and undermine America's reliability and standing in the world. It just went into effect and it's already causing so much damage. In South Africa, researchers were actually forced to shut down an HIV prevention trial, leaving women with experimental implants inside their bodies without medical supervision.
In Bangladesh, food assistance for refugees will be cut in half in March and completely run out in April. And in Djibouti, warehouses are stocked with next month's food supply, but since truck drivers have been fired, the food will probably go bad before it can reach those in need.
This freeze touches truly every corner of the world since the U.S. is the largest provider of humanitarian assistance in the world. The freeze has stopped clinical trials in Britain and schools in Afghanistan, seed vaults in Haiti, and even mine clearing in Cambodia. Except, interestingly, the freeze does not apply to weapons support for countries like Israel and Egypt, although it falls under like the foreign assistance umbrella.
And despite all the chaos, this order is legal, or at least part of it. Trump has the power to freeze general foreign assistance, but what he can't do is dismantle USAID.
So USAID oversees $40 billion of the $70 billion that is spent on foreign assistance, and that money is appropriated by Congress. So only Congress can like move it, abolish it, or consolidate it. Trump legally can't touch the organization.
And we're sure you've heard some of the wild claims about where this USAID money is going.
Through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia.
But a lot of it is misinformation, like USAID sending $50 million to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. That is false. Funds in Gaza were to operate field hospitals, treat malnutrition, deliver babies, and perform surgeries.
And a lot of this misinformation is stemming from like a weird choice in framing. So, for example, Speaker Mike Johnson claimed a lot of these funds were going to Nepal to encourage the spread of atheism. But the funds that he was referring to were actually going to programs to expand religious freedom protections.
Even Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is now the acting administrator of USAID, said that only 10% of the USAID budget reaches people, but in reality, over 92% of it does.
And as a part of Trump's 90-day pause on USAID operations, thousands of USAID workers were placed on paid leave, and staffers around the world were told to come home from their missions. But hours before it was going to go into effect, a judge temporarily blocked it.
The judge, who is actually a Trump appointee, ruled on a lawsuit brought by the largest union representing federal workers and will actually hear expedited arguments tomorrow.
So Trump's involvement in USAID is illegal.
So we bet a lot of you are asking, why is President Trump doing so much so fast, potentially overstepping the power of the presidency? And beyond just believing in those actions, the Democrats have another theory. Trump's first-term tax cuts for households making over $450,000 a year are set to expire at the end of this year. And if Republicans want to extend them another 5 or 10 years, which reporting says they do, it would cost the government $4.6 trillion. So they need to find that money elsewhere, basically. Listen to this viral clip of AOC.
And right now, what is happening is that all of these tax cuts that billionaires and millionaires have been just getting high off the hog on over the last couple of years are now about to run dry. If they do not reauthorize them, if they do not extend them, and not only if they do not extend them, but ideally they want to add to them. And in order to extend them, you need to find $4 trillion. Well, where do you look? Because historically, in this country, when you need to pay for something, you pay for it with taxes.
Wow, that was a lot. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So next week, we're continuing this list in Is This Legal? Part 2.
Yes, so we're going to get into the stories that you might not have heard of, like sending migrants to Guantanamo Bay and moving trans women to men's prisons and more. When you're buying a diamond, you're usually evaluating the 4 C's: cut, color, carat, and clarity. But now there's another decision to make. What kind of diamond do you want, lab-grown or mined?
And I have friends who feel strongly on both sides. And today, lab-grown diamonds make up 20% of the total diamond market, which is crazy because it was only 0% 10 years ago.
Yeah, now we see all these like celebrities sporting lab-grown diamond jewelry. Pandora launched a lab-grown diamond collection, and apparently they're so identical to mined diamonds that the FTC actually changed its jewelry guide to get rid of the word natural from its diamond definition.
And depending on the size and cut of the stone, lab-grown diamonds are 70% to even 90% cheaper. Like a 3-carat natural diamond will set you back $37,000, whereas a 3-carat lab-grown diamond is only $3,700.
The average nationwide cost of an engagement ring last year was $5,500 according to The Knot. So if in today's economy that is the average spending budget for an engagement ring, it makes sense that people are opting for lab-grown diamonds because you can get a way bigger diamond for a fraction of the price.
So let's get into the pros of natural versus lab-grown diamonds. Let's start with natural, which are branded as a timeless piece of Earth's history. It's a very romantic idea. It takes billions of years for diamonds to form beneath Earth's crust. So once all the natural diamonds are used up, That's it.
The greatest allure of a diamond is that it's so rare. It's like buried deep under the earth. It's this exotic gem. Diamonds are also unique. They actually have variations in color and texture, and a lot of them have like degrees of imperfection that a lot of people think adds to their beauty, whereas lab-grown diamonds are grown to be like flawless and perfect, but they're all identical.
Mine diamonds can also be a valuable long-term investment. So even though the diamond market has been hurting in the past year, like the luxury market, experts still say you can get 50% back on what you paid for natural diamonds compared to lab-grown, which has virtually no resale value.
But depending on the size of the diamond, losing 50% off a mined diamond can be a lot more financially taxing than losing 100% off like a much cheaper lab-grown stone.
That's true. So let's get into the cons of natural diamonds. Sustainability is a big one because they require deep earth mining.
Yeah, just 1 carat of diamonds causes up to 7,000 pounds of earth displacement, disturbs nearly 100 square feet of land, and creates around 6,000 pounds of mineral waste.
And then there are ethical questions about where the diamond comes from, hence the term blood diamond.
Yeah, as beautiful and sparkly as they are, diamonds do have a very sad and violent history. They've been used to fund wars in countries like Angola, the Congo, and Sierra Leone. The term blood diamond was actually coined by the UN in the 90s and has evolved to mean diamonds whose trade is based on aggression or violence.
Well, we all remember the 2006 Leonardo DiCaprio movie that popularized the term. Luckily, today, only 1% of diamonds are considered blood diamonds.
Yeah, the world started to demand like ethical guarantees from the diamonds that they were buying. Programs like the Kimberley process, which was launched in 2000, imposed strict requirements on tracing diamonds to make sure that they don't come from countries in conflict.
But supporters of lab-grown diamonds would say one of the pros is that you don't have to worry about that at all.
We spoke to Akshay Javeri, founder of the lab-grown diamond jewelry brand Grown Brilliance, to learn more about the pros of lab-grown diamonds.
We saw that you started in fine jewelry. So what made you want to switch over to lab-grown diamonds?
So the misconception is that lab-grown diamonds is not fine jewelry because we use 14 karat gold. We have the same workshop that you would make natural diamonds in. It wasn't really a switch. For me, it was an organic transition, being sustainable, of being ethical and doing away with the malpractices that are associated with natural diamonds.
So what are the benefits to buying lab-grown instead of natural?
So plenty. With lab-grown diamonds, you can get a much bigger diamond for the budget that you have. A lot of customers that come to us today say that the reason we went the lab-grown way is because now I can actually put a down payment on our house or have a more lavish honeymoon or plan ahead and have some savings. The second one, which is my favorite, is quality. You get a much, much better quality diamond for what you're paying for versus what you would get in a natural diamond. We've done away with the lower quality lab-grown diamonds that still exist in the industry. But today we only offer DEF quality diamonds in color. And we only offer VS1 and above in clarity. Most of our engagement rings are in that range, which is great because you know that no matter which diamond you buy from us, they're always going to be eye clean, sparkly.
So how do you grow a diamond?
So that's a great and boring as well as a technical question, but for those who are interested and the geeky ones, I think this would be a fun one. So we take a little seed of a carbon diamond and you put it in a sphere and you close the sphere and give it the high pressure and high tension that it would possibly have if it was growing under the earth.
Wow.
So from 1 to 3 billion years for a diamond to be created under the earth, and with all of the costs associated with mining and all of that gets taken away, and within few weeks you have a diamond that you can, a rough diamond that you can cut into a polished one.
And then what happens next? How do you start like shaping those diamonds?
Once the rough diamond is out, the planning of the rough diamond to make sure we get maximum yield from a diamond or the best shape it can be cut into where you avoid any inclusions while cutting it. It's all the same. It's laser mapped and then laser cut after that, just like any other natural diamond would be cut.
How or can you tell the difference between a natural diamond and a lab-grown diamond?
It's atomically, physically, optically, all the same. There is only one atom off. The only machine that can tell the difference between a lab-grown and a natural diamond is the GIA ID 100. It's a machine that was created by GIA, Gemological Institute of America. That machine can tell that one atom that's off in the diamond. But if you held a diamond tester to a lab-grown diamond or a natural diamond, it would still test as a diamond.
It's crazy that you can grow a diamond in a few weeks because diamonds used to be the rarest resource on Earth. So they were first discovered in India in the 4th century BC. And for 2 millennia, people thought diamonds only existed in India. But then they were found in Brazil and South Africa and now all over the world.
Yeah, apparently there are diamond mines in Canada now. But we have to be honest, a big reason that this story is so interesting to us is because we are in that phase of life where all our friends are getting like engaged and married. So the conversation of like, should I get a lab grown or a mined diamond engagement ring is pertinent right now. Apparently, lab grown diamonds now take up 45% of the bridal jewelry market.
Sure, a lot of us remember this from AP US history, but engagement rings were invented by an ad campaign. So the diamond company De Beers, which at its peak controlled 90% of the global diamond market, launched an advertisement in the late 1940s with the iconic slogan, "A diamond is forever."
The diamond engagement ring. How else could 2 months' salary last forever? A diamond is forever. De Beers.
Diamonds and engagement obviously go like hand in hand now, but in 1940, only 10% of brides-to-be were getting diamond engagement rings, and in 1990, that number skyrocketed to 80%.
That is crazy. Rings are so deeply entrenched in the institution of marriage now. Travis Kelce actually had to field some crafty questions about this before the Super Bowl.
Do you think diamonds are a good investment?
Yeah, why not? I mean, these Super Bowl rings are filled with them, so yeah.
Are you in the market to buy a diamond?
I like earrings. I like, necklaces, stuff like that.
Wonder if you'll get lab-grown earrings. But it's interesting how the emergence of the lab-grown diamond market has created some new trends. Like in general, the average engagement ring has actually gotten bigger. So the preference for a lab-grown engagement ring is around 2 carats, while the average preferred size for a natural is 1.4 carats, which is actually 50% larger than before lab-grown diamonds came to market.
And the choice between mined or lab-grown diamond really comes down to what you consider meaningful, like price, ethics, sustainability, uniqueness. But with the price of lab-grown diamonds dropping year over year as more and more are mass-produced, experts say there's a potential for a dual market to emerge, with mined diamonds positioned as luxury items and lab-grown as like fast fashion.
And experts are predicting that these new companies will need like gimmicks to set them apart because they're all just kind of producing the same product. So Grown Brilliance, for example, offers unique customizations. So Akshay actually said that you could draw like an engagement ring on a napkin and then give it to the company and it would make it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, she said they once made a mouse-shaped diamond. She also said they've seen an increase in the marquee shape since a certain celebrity got a marquee ring. Selena Gomez.
We had Akshay show us some of her favorites from Grown Brilliance's collection.
So this is a 12 carat pair that's ideal cut, DE in color. Very, very unique because each of these rings, each one of these are designed by me. Something like this in a natural diamond would cost you millions of dollars. This ring right now on Grown Brilliance is $24,000.
Whoa, that's a crazy difference.
We've been getting a lot of requests for pink diamonds. These are ovals. This is a 5 carat oval. The side stones being half moons, what we call them. It's an updated classic, I would say. So this one is again one of my favorites. It's a 6 7/8 carat weight oval 3-stone ring, and this ring is running at Grown Brilliance for $10,000.
Wow.
We were curious about what the future of the lab-grown diamond industry is going to look like, especially with all of these companies kind of popping up. If everyone can make this like perfect diamond in 2 weeks, like what does the future look like?
Simply put, everyone can make a bag, but only certain brands make it big. Especially like us, we've been first to market as the only lab-grown diamond company, whereas everybody else was doing both. I think the trust factor is going to be a big one. The branding is going to be huge, right? So I think design-wise, quality-wise. So just going back to 2022, where the natural diamond market was about 15 billion, and end of 2024 it was 7 billion. I think that kind of tells you that the 7 billion loss of natural diamonds is gain for lab-grown diamonds, because that is your next best or even better alternative to natural diamonds. Yeah. So I think that the future is very bright. It's very strong.
Did you know that swans like having threesomes, that monkeys pay for sex, and that gay penguins raise adopted chicks? Well, neither did we until we read this very interesting book that came out last week.
There were so many fascinating tidbits about animal sexual behavior. Like, I didn't know that in clownfish, when the alpha female dies, the alpha male of the group transitions into the alpha female. So Nemo's dad would have become Nemo's mom.
This Valentine's Day, we thought it would be appropriate to strip this book. Obviously, Wren suggested the pun.
I had to do it.
By Nathan Lents, called The Sexual Evolution: How 500 Million Years of Sex, Gender, and Mating Shape Modern Relationships.
We think of liberating sexual behavior as novel to a progressive 21st century culture, but it's actually the result of billions of years of evolutionary experimentation by the animal kingdom.
Lentz is a scientist and professor at John Jay College, and in the book, he takes us on a provocative journey through the animal kingdom, and it was super interesting and fun to read. It shows how sexual diversity can teach us so much about ourselves.
We really enjoyed the book, and we think you guys will really enjoy hearing from Nathan and gaining his insights.
Your book explores this misconception that sex, especially among animals, is just the biological purpose to procreate, but you kind of explore the fact that it's not. Like, animals do have sex for fun. So what made you want to write about this?
Well, I'm really reacting against the societal reaction against the more sort of sexually liberated attitudes that are dominating young people right now. You know, the old rules, the old definitions, the old labels just aren't cutting it anymore for today's generation of young people. Is a rediscovery of a much more rich and expansive relationship with sex that our ancestors used to have and that other animals enjoy today. Because you're exactly right. Animals have sex for a whole bunch of reasons. It's not just to fertilize, the next offspring. A lot more goes on. And I think that it's normal that humans are kind of finally getting around to appreciating that and exploring that for themselves.
Yeah. In what ways have humans projected societal norms onto animals?
Well, I mean, the classic example of this was that, migratory birds pair up. They form pair bonds, and they couple. And so it was just always assumed that since they work together building a nest and incubating the eggs, and they have really good division of labor, they cooperate very well as a pair, it was always assumed that the eggs that they were incubating belonged to both of them genetically. Everyone assumed that included sexual monogamy. But we now know that in birds it almost never does. The birds are almost never sexually monogamous. They're having sex outside of their pair bond for various reasons. But what was interesting is that it was assumed for literally hundreds of years by the best scientists of their day that they were sexually faithful. The reason that was kind of forced upon the field was DNA testing. And so I think that was a first classic example of how we were really missing what animals were doing because of our own bias, because we were so insistent on interpreting the world through our lens. And, it wasn't like a coordinated effort. We just do that. Bias is an innate way that we see the world. Unfortunately, it really colors everything we do. We have to work very hard to eliminate bias from our perspective. And scientists are no different.
Yeah, that was something Mabel and I kept texting each other. How is no one talking about this? Why do you say scientists should kind of consider the default sexual orientation for animals bisexual?
Yeah, because animals are not restricted in their sexuality by these broad constructions such as heterosexuality or even homosexuality. That's too narrow, because here's how to think of it. Once you accept that animals have a lot of reasons to have sex with each other, meaning that there are advantages. So it's alliance building, or even potentially dominance struggles, or it can be deceptive. It can be financial. There can be a transaction. There's lots of reasons why an animal has sex with another animal. If you absolutely won't have sex with half of the population, to me, that looks like only a cost. There's only a detriment there.
Well, this is a Valentine's Day episode, so we have to ask, in your research, did you find anything particularly romantic about animals and sex at all?
Well, I mean, so let me give you the answer from our close relatives. One thing that's clear is that animals use sex to connect with one another. They really do. So, for example, most people think of lion prides as being dominated by a single male with a mane and then a few females. They think of it as like a harem, lifestyle. But it turns out most lion prides are actually dominated by coalitions of males that have sex with each other. And they have sex to promote harmony, to reduce conflict, sometimes as dominant struggles. To see, who's on top, who's the alpha. That's a normal part of the social life of lions. Here's another thing that's kind of Valentine's Day-ish, because we do buy gifts for each other and chocolates and flowers and things. So there are many species that give what are called nuptial gifts, where they sort of have to purchase sexual access. There are creatures that literally secrete food and offer it in exchange for sexual access. So they use their own body to create and synthesize food called a spermatophore, and in this case, a female would either choose to accept it or not. So, I'd like to think that our Valentine's Day isn't quite so quid pro quo, but at the same time, like it's when a man buys a woman a drink in a bar, nobody thinks about it as direct one-to-one, right? But it's the first step, hopefully, towards a sexual interaction.
Not to get too political, but obviously our president recently signed an order declaring officially that there are only two genders. What does nature tell us about gender?
Nature just does not traffic in binaries. Nature traffics in spectra. He also mixes gender and sex, because he doesn't know. He doesn't know what the terms really mean. Animals don't have just male typical and female typical modes. There are variations within those two. And there are males that mimic female in some ways and vice versa. I don't really like the term mimicry, but that's the word we have to use. And what is going on with these executive orders is entirely unserious in terms of its reliance on science. It's a serious threat, but it's not serious in the way that it approaches sex and gender.
It seems like your book touches on, sex and animals, but it actually kind of just touches on so much that's going on in the world right now. So that's really interesting to us.
Unfortunately, the book has become very important. We finished this book, went off to press in the summer, last summer, and obviously we didn't know where we'd be right now. And in fact, a lot of things I would have written them a little differently, because the world that's receiving this book now is different than the world I wrote it in. I think science needs to assert itself into this conversation, because a lot of people are misusing science to support a position that really isn't scientifically tenable. I'm sorry, the science is not on the side of the gender reactionaries. And so I think it's time for scientists to really step up.
Could you speak a bit about, I don't even know if the term is used in animals, transgender animals, but I know you wrote about a lot of animals, species that transition.
In a lot of animals, sex is not immutable. You can switch sex from one to the other as a normal part of your lifespan or in response to environmental conditions or social conditions. There are plenty of animals that switch sex. There are animals that are both sexes, that are hermaphroditic, either at the same time or sequentially. Animals have sort of gender non-conforming behaviors as part of the normal social milieu in their species, and there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing unnatural about them. It's a different strategy. Sometimes it's just simply behavioral. Sometimes it's morphological. They will look different. Their bodies are different than the rest of their sex. And just because they're a minority doesn't mean that they're not an important part of that species. If you're committed to the two bucket system, then yeah, lots of animals are transgender. What we do know is that the other animals have no problem with it. It doesn't bother any of them. They all have an important role to play. In fact, actually, female mimicry, as it's often called among males, one of its key features is that it avoids aggression from other males. So if you think about that, it's the opposite of them having a problem with it. It actually pacifies other males, and they avoid aggression from them because of that. It tells me that diversity in all of these is it's normal that it's going to pop up. And you're going to see these variations. And then some of the variations will be successful, some will not. That's how nature works, right? It kind of creates diversity in a blind, random way. And then the environment selects, for success or not.
Thanks for tuning in.
Next week, we're taking you to outer space with Space Force, and you're getting a lesson in color analysis. So place your bets now on what season you think we are. Spring, winter,
autumn, summer. We'll find out next week.
Bye.